let's go to Spinks in Bruton, Alabama. Spinks. What's up, dude?
How are you, Dr. John?
Rocking and rolling, man. How about yourself?
I'm well, thank you.
You bet. So what's up, man?
Okay, so let me give you a brief summary of kind of how we got here, and then I'll ask my question if that's okay.
You got it.
So I am a broadcast meteorologist, and
You sound like a meteorologist. You sound like one.
Thanks. Thank you. So I wanted to do weather and be a meteorologist pretty much my whole life. I was really fascinated with weather as a kid and really fortunate to have a grandmother who, you know, created experiences and bought me things and encouraged me from a very young age to kind of go down that path if I chose to.
Sure.
So graduated college, went to college at the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa.
You had to get that in there, didn't you? You just had to get that in there.
That's right.
Man.
That's right.
All right. I'll give you that one.
I actually grew up an Auburn fan, if that makes you feel any better.
No, both of them they're both terrible, but whatever. You got it in there. So there you go.
Yeah.
At least you're not an Aggie.
So,
all right, go for it.
There you go. So went to college and then worked briefly in television in the Birmingham, Alabama television market. And then I actually moved back to my hometown to be a full-time youth minister, which kind of opened my eyes to a totally different world that I had never really, been in. So I realized about a year into that job that I wanted to get back into broadcast weather. So I started a company to keep my feet wet, and that ended up turning into a part-time job and subsequently a full-time job. And thankfully, the company has done really well, and that's due in part to, the principle that y'all teach, you and Dave Ramsey on a daily basis. Those are kind of ingrained in the company, and really thankful to have kind of been a Ramsey person my whole life. But over the last few years, I've really had more and more people message me about having severe weather anxiety and specifically tornado anxiety. Not only, the messages, but also sometimes when I'm in public, people will see me and want to talk about their severe weather experiences and their, severe weather anxiety. So my question for you is this. What are some effective ways that I can help to alleviate this severe weather anxiety? And I guess kind of elaborating on that, what would you say to me and to people in my industry as a mental health professional, as far as, do you have any suggestions on how we can be more effective communicators during, crises like tornadoes?
Yes, dude, I love this question. I love it for a few reasons. One, I grew up in Houston, the Gulf, and so I've been sheltering in place and getting in bathtubs with mattresses since I was a little bitty kid, right? So I've got my own ingrained weather anxiety. And I've had to work through it over the past 5 to 6 to 7 years. And it's been, I love this question for a personal reason. Can I be super blunt and honest with you, or you want me to talk peripherally?
No, be super blunt and honest.
Okay. I'm going to speak to you as though I'm clowning on you, but it's actually for the entire ecosystem. Is that cool?
Yes, absolutely. I think I may know where this is going.
You're such a great person. I appreciate you taking one for the team, right? Okay. So I think let's answer this from kind of the top of the funnel. Anxiety, to make it really easy, can distill down into 3 buckets, right? Am I scared? Does your body detecting that something scary is happening? Whether you're in an abusive relationship, you're not safe. It remembers a time when you drove on this road and you were making this left turn when you got in a bad car accident. So it's going to start, it put a pin in that, right? So there's safety. Then there is disconnection. I'm out of step with my community. I don't have any relationships. My body has found me alone, and it's going to sound the alarms. Or the third one is autonomy, right? I am not in control of tomorrow. I'm not in control of my next step. And when we get in weather situations, that's one of those few moments when you are completely and totally out of control. You're scared to death. And often we find ourselves isolating alone. So feeling anxious about weather is right, and it's good, and it's not something that we're not broken when we get nervous about it. What happens though is the ecosystem that we've created for ourselves when it comes to how media communicates weather. I think has shifted from I'm giving you good information to I need to get clicks and sell ads. And
Absolutely.
this
Absolutely.
this is a critique of the internet media, of course, but it's bled over into public, right? So now when it's raining outside, I can turn on the news just to check it out, and it will be a big, bright, bold, red, breaking news, breaking weather update. Mm-hmm. Right? You see what I'm saying? Everything is designed to get me to focus in on there and to sound the alarms that I'm not safe, right?
Sure.
And there's the broader conversation that tells us that because of climate change, we're going to have more tornadoes, more hurricanes, they're going to be more aggressive, we're going to have hailstorms, the crops are going to all fail, right? What's the latest one is that the government and rich people are drumming up a food shortage. Like we're being fed this all the time that we're going to die, and that the weather and climate are the reason. And so that's coming from the inside out, right? And storms are escalating, and the weather's bananas. And what used to be right, so it is actually happening too. And so it's this both and. So I think your question is incredibly important because you sit as the person people go to when they're anxious or when they're scared, and they've got all this baggage that they're bringing with them, and they look at you and say, "Help." Right? And so then what do we do?
And I think from my perspective too, I'm kind of in a unique position because, like I said, I started a company essentially being, the TV weathercaster, but I own, the company from the top down, right? And so I think too, a lot of folks don't realize, or it seems to me that a lot of folks don't realize that these larger media conglomerates that own these local television stations, you're right, are pushing the narrative, from the top down, and sometimes that can lead to, local meteorologists pushing things in a way that may not be as helpful. Not to say that they're not doing good work. I think they are, of course. But I think that a lot of folks don't realize that, a lot of this is, being pushed from the top sometimes.
Right. And that when they tell you, hey, things just turned, you're good, that message isn't always communicated because the goal is to keep you on, right? Because I want you to keep watching the station. So whenever I'm sitting down with somebody who's struggling with anxiety of any kind, a couple of things guide my path there, okay? Number one is presence. I'm going to show up. And I think someone who's doing weather is uniquely positioned, especially someone who's not market hopping, and you know how that whole rigmarole goes. I'm going to do 2 years in this one and 1 year here and all that. Somebody who creates a stable presence. I'll be here, right? And you can trust me. And you can also trust that I'm going to probably oversell it this way or undersell it this way. We had a guy in one of my communities I lived in, they'd call him Run for the Hill Ron Roberts or whatever his name was. But also everybody went to him every single time. And like it's kind of like Delony comes in and I'm like, I saw the best movie ever. They know it wasn't the best movie ever, but they know it's pretty good. But they know me, right? There's a presence. And so presence is number one. A big one that I follow is facts are your friends. When somebody's stressed out, when somebody is fried, what they need is very limited true data. When a mother opens the door and there's an officer standing there in full uniform and I'm standing there, she instantly knows something's happened. If I start with, well, it was raining really hard and there were cars, right? That's not how you do that. You open the door and say, ma'am, there was a car accident and your son was in the car and he has died. Facts are your friends. And there's a period there. And I'm going to say it directly. I'm going to say it forward, right? And then after we pick her up and take her inside, over the next couple of hours, there will be discussions and back and forth. And one of the things that I was trained to do that I'm pretty good at is those conversations go up and down and up and down and up and down. So there's going to be some strange moments of deep guttural laughter sometimes. And there's going to be some deep moments of fear and scared. And what do we do? And here's who you call next. So I use that example to tell you the best group I've ever seen. And I grew up in Texas. You know how volatile the weather is in Texas. The best I've ever seen is this crew here in Nashville, the Nashville Severe Weather. It's a couple of guys who have a Twitter account. And I don't even have Twitter, but I follow them. And here's why it's great. They say things like, hey, it's past, go to bed. Get off the computer. They'll
giving an all clear, in other words.
Yeah, it's an all clear, but it's an all clear like I would get from a buddy, not an all clear from an AI. They give funny memes in between their reports. And also, they're very direct when they say, go get under something now if you're in this area. And they use that very sparingly. And so what I've come in my 4 years I've been in Nashville, 5 years I've been in Tennessee, I've come to trust they're funny. They're going to have moments of levity. If they say jump, you better jump because they're not messing around. They're not playing with you. And they tell me to go to bed. Their goal isn't to keep me on there as long as possible. Their goal is to give me accurate information. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, yeah.
So those three things, I think, in someone in your like as a public figure, is I'm going to show up every time. I'm gonna be a presence for you, and I'm going to give you true data, true information. And if it's no big deal, I'm going to say it's no big deal. Go back to bed. If it's a huge deal, I'm going to tell you. And three, I'm going to intersperse humor and connection wherever I can. Right? Whether that's funny memes, whether that's the dad joke of the day, or whether that's whatever that is. Here's a recipe for staying up late since you're going to be up late tonight because there are going to be tornadoes all over your area. Those kind of things. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Absolutely.
I think some leadership in the area of here's what I'm nervous about. I'm actually scared about it. I'm scared that with escalating weather, and this isn't a political statement, and I still can't figure out for the life of me how weather has gotten politicized. It's bananas to me.
Right.
But as it has become increasingly more volatile and increasingly more wild, right? And the temperature swings and the rain, all that. The more noise there is, the more people disregard it. And the more dangerous it becomes for everybody. And so I would love to see someone like you, Spinks, who says, I'm going to be a part of this new generation of meteorologists, and we're going to start a conversation that says, hey, how do we connect with our communities again and not try to get them to buy Metamucil ads, like whatever the thing that's going to come up? How can we give them some information that's going to help them sleep and help them stay safe instead of let's get them wound up? Right, and I know that's so easier said than done because of the conglomerates you're talking about. But
well, and this may be a topic for another day. But what would you say? Like one of the things that I encounter pretty frequently, we see on social media people who have no training in meteorology. Even sometimes teenagers that get on Facebook and post these wild single image model runs and kind of pass them off as a forecast, but then they go viral because. It's the shock factor, right? And what would you say, like, to folks who kind of are in tune to that sort of thing, but perhaps should be more in tune to like a local person who is trained?
Two things. One, you're exactly right. Our brains are designed to scan the environment for the worst possible outcome because that's how it stays alive. And 5,000 years ago, or 50 million years ago, whatever. If a twig snapped in the forest, it's better that I assume that's a bear, even though it's probably not. Because if I'm wrong, I'm dead. And if I'm right, I just jumped really high and nothing happened, right? Now you take that same brain wiring and fast forward, and now some 17-year-old with a computer model and a Twitter account can keep an entire neighborhood awake, right? And screw up their weather patterns and their traffic patterns and their shopping, all that stuff. So I think that we have to have a generation that pops up real fast, yourself included. I'm thinking of the Lane Nortons of the world, the Sal DiStefano and the Mind Pump guys with fitness. I'm thinking of Huberman when it comes to some of the mental health stuff and science. This show, your show, that will call that out directly. Do not get weather advice from a knuckle-headed Facebook account. Right? And I'm just going to call it what it is and say somebody is running their mouth. They don't know what they're talking about. Here's actual data. Here's actual science. And if you build that trust over time and you don't become an alarm sounder all the time unless you really need to sound the alarm, then people will begin to trust you. But there's going to take a group of people who actually know what they're talking about to come out of our laboratories and come out of our circles. I just like to hang out with mental health folks. That's what I love to do. And I like to hang out with doctors and lawyers. And I've got to leave those circles and start communicating some of this truth in other ways, right? So I think you've got to call that out directly. And if somebody, if a group of people tweet you 5 or 6 or 7 of the same photo, call it out. Say, hey, I keep getting this photo. This is nonsense. Hey, Frank at Frank's Garage 87, like, stop posting stuff. You're going to get people hurt. This is nonsense and it's garbage, right? And I think calling it out.
Gotcha.
This is a great one.
Good to know. I think it's fair to say that maybe a little. It's certainly easier said than done, especially when
everything I just said is easier said than done. Yes, no question.
Oh, sure, totally. Not saying it's not worth it. I think it is, but definitely easier said than done.
Yeah, I think there's got to be some sort of collective movement to center things back. Not politically, again. I don't want to get your mean cards and letters, everybody, but center it back.
That's right.
Things are getting crazy when it comes to weather. Things are getting extreme and things are speeding up. And I need to know when it's a big deal for me or not. I need to know when there's a pattern that's happening over time, right? So I need to know some of this true data, but I also need it in a not sensationalized time because it's just a big game of boy cried wolf. And now people are just starting to check out, right? They're just saying, I'm completely out of this conversation. So whether you're a parent, whether you're a therapist, whether you're a psychologist, whether you're a medical doctor, whether you are a meteorologist like Spinks and his communities, whatever you do, the more you bang on drums and cry wolf, the education system's falling apart. We're all going to It's not. It's not. Is it in a mess right now? Absolutely. Absolutely. I just was in a meeting this morning. I'm taking this on a left turn, but I'll come back. I was just in a meeting this morning. The company that I work for, there's about 1,100 employees, adopted a single school this year. And they gave every employee a week off to go support this school. There's a big group of us that are going to get certified as substitute teachers, who are going to get certified as aides, who are going to, groups have already come in and cut out things for teachers, make copies, do coffee, make breakfasts. Take this school over and support and love them. Because education's not broken. Teachers teaching kids isn't broken. It's teachers having to be roofers and pavement employees. They have to, and craftsmen and social workers and therapists, and deal with their own homes, all for barely minimum wage. And if you do the hour, sometimes it's not even minimum wage. So it's time for people like companies and like local communities and local churches to step up and start taking care of some of these schools, right? So that's a group of people in a community stepping up and saying, we have a problem here. Let's be a part of the solution. Let's just don't throw grenades on Facebook. Same with the weather. Same with any number of challenges we have in our communities. Let's get a group of people to step up and start being a part of that. And Spinks, shout out to you and your company for leading that charge. If you are anxious about weather, find a organization, find a voice that you trust, whether it's on the internet like the one I found, whether it's a particular anchor, if you will. I keep thinking of Anchorman, Ron Burgundy. Find somebody who will give you good information and then turn it off.